What's up guys, welcome to the fourth tutorial in our PyPlot course. Here we're going to work on customizing our graphs, and it will be a way to customize how the graphs appear as well as how the data is represented. We'll start by adding titles to the graph and then changing the axes, so just adding axes labels. And finally we'll finish off with changing the line or the dot appearance of the graphs. So let's head on over to the code now. Alright, this is where we left off last time, number 3. That was just creating some random data and plotting it. So we just created basically 100 random data points. This is what the first iteration of them looked like in a regular line plot and then in a scatter plot. Note how there are no labels here for either the axes or the title, and both of them are this kind of boring, flat default blue. So we're going to work on adding the title and the labels, and then work on changing both the line appearance and the dot appearance. So let's go ahead and get started here with a new cell. Just going to create that. Okay, and let's just zoom in a bit. Okay. So the first thing to do, add again those titles. I'll start just by kind of replotting everything. So I'll do plt.plot x and y, okay? And then again plt.show like this. If we go ahead and run that cell, that's again just going to give us our default plot. Now, one thing to note here, I know that this plot looks different from this one. I mean, it's still that blue, no labels and everything, but note how the data is different. So clearly different y points. Okay, that's just because I had to rerun my kernel because I kind of closed it in between. But and because I reran the kernel, it just generated a new set of y points for me. Okay, so that's just why things look different. Don't worry, nothing really has changed because again, this data doesn't really represent anything anyway. All right, so we want to first add a title to this label. What we're going to do before we do plt.show is do something like plt.title, okay? And then we're going to put our title in a string here. So let's just say, I don't know, some title. Let's go up top. Okay, we can go ahead and run that, and you can see that's provided a nice little title there. Note that this is a function call, okay, so you do have to do title and then the title in the brackets here. Make sure not to do plt.title equals, because then that reassigns the function, okay, and then you kind of have to re-import matplot library PyPlot and kind of run through all these steps again. Okay, so the axes are still unlabeled. We can set those with a plt.x label, okay, and a plt.y label. So obviously this will do the x-axis and the y-axis respectively. So we can just do something like x-title. Let's just do it like x-label here. And we can do y-label. Again, this data doesn't really represent anything, so it's kind of pointless to give a real title to these axes or to the overall title. But realistically, you should be doing this on every graph that you display, obviously with an actual title and actual axes, because otherwise anyone look at your graph, they're not really going to understand what the data represents. Okay? Even if you don't care about the appearance, at the very, very least, you should be adding these 3 items. Again, just make sure that it's done before plt.show. Otherwise, the 3 items won't be displayed on the graph. The plt.show shows the plot in its current state. Okay? Cool stuff. Now, what about customizing the appearance of the line or the dots? Well, there's a couple ways we can do that, and we'll dive into both of them. I guess we'll start with the easy one. Just going to add in a new cell down here and copy this stuff in. We'll start with the easy one, and that's actually done by passing parameters right into the plot function when we go to run it. Now there's 2 sets of parameters that we can pass in. One is going to determine the color of the graph, and the other is going to be used to determine how the different points look. So you can see here they're just kind of regular medium-sized dots. Here there's no dots, it's just a line. We'll, I guess, first focus on the color, and then we can talk about the line, the dot appearance. Okay, so here I'll give you a quick list of the colors. I'm just going to pause this and write them all down. Okay, here you go. I think this is all of them. There may be more, but I'm pretty sure this is all of them. So we got white, we got red, yellow, green, black, I believe, cyan, which is kind of like a light blue. Then there's just blue, and then magenta. So interesting color combo, but that's those are all the colors available. Now to specify them through our plot, what we're going to do is we're going to open up some quotes after we specify the x and y values, and then we're going to choose one of these here. So let's say we wanted a red plot. We could do that. Okay, you can see that we get a nice red line there. We wanted, let's say, a magenta plot. We do the M. and so on and so forth. Okay, so basically it's just specified one of these color codes, and that will kind of plot the respective color on there. Now, what about the dot appearance? Well, that's done through a similar sort of thing. We basically just specify the code in a string, but there are lots and lots of options to choose from. In fact, I'm again going to pause it and we'll write them all down. Okay, and here we go. So I believe this is all of them. Again, there may be one or two that I'm missing, but there are a whole lot of different ones to choose from. Obviously, I'm not going to run through them all because I think that's pointless. I would recommend that you do, though, just so that you get a feel for what some of them look like and how you can change the appearance of your graph. Okay, we'll go through a couple of examples, though, don't worry. So one thing that we might want is to change these to, let's see what S is, okay? So let's do an S here. Actually, let's get rid of the color. We'll just work on the shape code, so make sure not to include any of these guys. Just use one of these for now. Okay, so a couple things. First, note that we're dealing with squares here. The S is clearly the code for a square dot instead of just a round regular dot. Note that it's gone back to the default color again. That's because we didn't specify a color code. And the third thing to note is that it's got rid of the line. So when we do plot and we add in not just a color but a shape, that actually automatically gets rid of the line unless we do one of these guys. So if we do one of those guys, then the line comes back and that changes the appearance. So let's say we wanted the double dash like this. You can see we get a dash line. We could do dash and dot like so. Okay, and I think that's kind of ugly, but in some graphs that might actually end up looking good. Okay, so these, as far as I know, are the only two that keep the line and just modify the line appearance. All of the others make the graph change to dots, and then it will kind of add those dots in. For example, I think this is a pentagon. You see that these become little pentagons. So I'd recommend that you kind of go through each one, take a look at how they look, and kind of maybe choose your favorite one. Now, I did mention that we can actually combine these, and that is true. Basically, we usually do the color code first and then the shape second, but we do it all in the same string. So I know that's kind of weird and unintuitive. You'd think they would be two separate parameters, but that's just kind of the way that Matplot library works. Okay, so let's say, for example, we wanted some red, let's say hexagons. So we could do RH. And as you can see, that has put the hexagons instead of just the round dots, and they are now red. Okay, so again, I'd recommend that you try different combinations of these things until you get the graph appearance that you really like. All right. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you was this setP function, which basically does something very, very similar to this, but is a bit more kind of explicit in how it's going to, I guess, look. For that, I'm just going to, again, start up a new cell and do plt dot plots. We're going to do X and Y again. Okay, and then we're going to do plt.show. Okay, so before we do plt.show, we're actually going to do plt.setP, okay, like this, and that will take in 3 different arguments. So one will be the line, okay, and then we can add the line style. You saw that actually. Let's just open that guy up again. Line style, you can do so through the quotes, just like before. So you could do like red pentagon or red hexagon, something like that, okay? Just like you did with the quotes. Or you can explicitly set, let's say, a line width and a color. So let's say, first of all, we have to get the line. So interestingly enough, we can retrieve that from plt.plot. We can just say the lines are going to be equal to this. Lines, I say plural because there may be multiple lines on this plot. In this case, there's only one, but there may be multiple. Okay, so plt.setP, we want to pass in the lines that we are plotting, okay? And then in this case, actually, I'm just going to be explicit and set a line width. Maybe let's do a really thick line just to demonstrate that point. And then we're going to do a color is going to be equal to whatever color we want. Maybe we'll do a nice green. Okay, so color has to be done through these strings. Again, the line width is done through a number, and also we can just do like the line style using these kind of codes like before. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll run that. As you can see, we get a nice thick line. Obviously, this is kind of too thick for this data because it's just too close and everything blends together, but you can see that it works. So we've got a specific line width and a green color, and so there we go. Okay, so that's pretty much all we wanted to cover. Again, I'd really highly recommend that you run through at least a few of these different ones to kind of see how everything is going to look. You might get some very unexpected dot appearances from these. I mean, who knows what 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to represent. But yeah, so definitely run through those, check out some of the colors, different combinations using set P or just using these color codes. And when you're ready to move on, let's start learning about the next topic. That next topic is going to be plotting multiple lines on a single graph or adding multiple subplots. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.